Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Working in Hockey podcast. I'm your host, Nick Bowins, joined by Lukas Georgas, as always, here. And today we've got a very special guest, the host and director of Leafs Morning Take, Mr. Nick Alberga. Nick, how you doing here today?
Boys, I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. How are you guys?
Everything is good except for the Leafs. Everything is good except for the
Yeah.
Leafs. But we're excited to dive into your career and path here, man. We've known each other for a couple years, but getting to see your different stops along the way and everything you're doing now with the Nation Network, it's awesome to see. I watch as a fan, I consume as a friend, so we're excited to chat here. For those who maybe don't know, what is Leafs Morning Take? What is your role there as host and director, my friend?
Yep. So it's a daily digital show available on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast. It's part of the Nation Network umbrella, which is part of Better Collective. The Nation Network comprises the likes of, Daily Faceoff, Oilers Nation, Flames Nation, Leafs Nation. So, of course, I host Leafs Morning Take. It's our flagship show, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday to Friday, with me and former Maple Leaf Jay Rosell. Just the ins and outs of all things Toronto Maple Leafs. We've got very captivating content. We've got opinion, which I think is vital here in 2025. So I've been doing that for the last 3.5 years here. And as director, I'm pretty much in charge of putting the show together, booking guests, creating ideas of what to talk about. And then after that, as host, I execute it as well.
That's awesome. And it's been cool to see you doing some of the in-person interviews with guys like OEL, Nick Robertson this year, and even just some of the guests you guys get on the show, like from Biz to Scotty Bowman, Max Scherzer. How cool is it to just talk hockey with so many different types of people?
It's sick. And I think this is a perfect podcast to reveal the importance of building a contact base. 15 years ago, guys, I started in this industry, and the one thing I hung on to from other producers is like save numbers. And that's exactly what happened working 8.5 years at SiriusXM NHL Network Radio. And I'm proud to say now, 15 years into my career, I have a sick ass Rolodex. Like it's part, I think, of the allure of Leafs Morning Take that's built the brand for this show as we about to hit 20,000 subscribers. To answer your question, it's so amazing to be able to text these people. And I think you realize quickly, yes, they're professional athletes, but more time than not, they want to talk. Like Scotty Bowman's 92, but he loves talking about hockey. And I think that's the pull. That's the only pull you need. Like they never ask, hey, how big's your show? I think part of the lesson people can learn is like, what's the worst that can happen if you text so and so and get a no? Like I always have a infamous story from the pandemic where I was doing a show with the great Linda Cohn there in the States. It was called Coast to Coast on NHL Network Radio. And I have Sidney Crosby's number. So I was like, why not? I texted Sidney Crosby. Did I get Crosby on? No, but I got through. I mean, his PR with Pittsburgh got a hold of me. So it's like, shoot your shot, I think is a big piece of advice I would give to people out there. If you're producing a show, if you're hosting a show, the worst thing that can happen is you can get a no. But to answer your question, yeah, it's a lot of fun to be able to dabble. And a lot of people don't know, like baseball is my number one sport. It was the sport I played growing up. To interview Scherzer is like a lifelong dream. And to tie the two in together, because this guy watches a bit of hockey, has been tied to the sport a bit, man, it's pretty damn cool.
Well, and like on Scherzer, it's so cool to see how with the growth of hockey, you do see more personalities outside the game getting involved in even just media. To touch on it a bit further, how is it doing a Leafs show with a Leafs legend like Jay Rosell as well?
It's pretty amazing. And it's funny, the story of how this show came together is pretty captivating as well. So I was in between jobs a couple years back, and I got approached, and within a couple weeks I had an offer. But initially they're like, we have this idea to do a daily show talking about the Maple Leafs. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. And obviously I was wrong. You look at what we built, you look at the various competitors out there like Dangle and company, like there's a lot of really riveting and strong like Leafs content out there. But I just really wondered about, at the beginning it was a half-hour show a day. Now it's close to an hour, maybe sometimes over. We did an hour and 8 minutes on this Wednesday. Like it just, I think it just shows you and proves that there's this hunger, this urge, and this want for that type of content out there. So yeah, it's pretty crazy how it's all come together. And with respect to Rosie and sharing that story, it was actually Luke Shen who, and I have to give credit to Frank Saravalli, who's the one who got me in contact with the Nation Network and pretty much got me this gig. But It was actually Luke Shen who reached out to Frank Saravalli and told him, hey, my buddy who's retired from professional hockey, Jay Rosals, interested in doing some media work. He's got a great personality. I think he'd be perfect for a role, because a lot of people don't know this. Pete Blackburn was the guy that they were throwing around to potentially be my co-host for this show. And I love Pete. I love his work, but I push back. I'm like, there's no way you can have a Boston Bruins guy on a Maple Leaf show. Like, I'll do it for a day and then I'll give up. I'll quit. So it didn't work out. It all came together. I love the idea, and that's the one thing I've realized in my career, and the reason why, and we'll talk about it a bit later on, I'm going back to teach at the College of Sports Media, is like giving back. But I really enjoy the aspect of like working with former players and coaching them up a bit. And while Rosie's like select company where I think he's just got it, I think the guy just loves to talk and he's got a great way of articulating comments and having an opinion, which I think is just so integral. But I've really, appreciated the whole part of the last 3.5 years in building things up with Rosie, because he is a star already. I can't wait to see what the next 5 to 10 years look like for him. But yeah, it was a match made in heaven, because I think many of you out there, you've been put in positions and you don't necessarily love who you work with. I can firmly say I really, really enjoy working with the guy too.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think, you hear it on the ice all the time, you don't have to love all your teammates, but when you do, it's that extra special, like Scherzer talked about and like you talk about there with Rosie. You mentioned the Nation Network a little bit there as well, Nick. I think a lot of people are starting to see that logo, all the different shows that are out there, but may not understand the overall umbrella or brand there, whether it's Merrick or our buddy Laz or even what Chaos Guys with Pete and DJ now there as well. What's it been like working under the Nation Network and seeing all these different avenues kind of come together and grow?
Incredible. It is the alternative to the corporate world. For any wrestling fans out there, NWO, like I literally brought that up when I had my first meeting, like, hey, what am I getting myself into? And when the company fires back with, hey, just don't get us put in jail, don't get us in legal issues, like, I'm like, sure. Like, I mean, I think there's a certain type of person that's going to work for this company. I think opinion is so important. I mean, in this land of social media and things going viral left and right, I think you need to have a pretty strong opinion. It's been such an amazing environment. I'm not just saying that because I've had so many winding roads in my career and worked for many corporations and others alike and done this and that, but they really give me the freedom to do what I want to do and how, enlist my vision, if you will. I think the biggest difference is that I wear many hats in this type of role. Like, people just see what happens on air, but they don't realize I put the rundown together. I'm booking the guests behind the scenes. I'm cutting clips. I'm working in cohesion with Vic Paladian, who's my technical producer, who is tremendous at his job. Who, once upon a time ago, I worked with at Sportsnet as well. So it's like a team sort of atmosphere. You put everybody together. It's just a smaller aspect as opposed to like a bigger chain. But I like that aspect where you're wearing multiple hats, but you have more say in the product that's getting out there. So yeah, it's been amazing. It's been tremendous. It's kind of crazy how the road led to this. Like, I was at a point in my career where I was at a crossroads. I got let go by Sportsnet. I was really wondering what to do. In fact, I was looking at careers outside of broadcasts, and then I got a call one day from Frank Saravalli, and here we are 3.5 years later, boys.
I love to hear that. It speaks again to the Rolodex, like you talked about earlier. And, you kind of talk about wearing different hats and owning different outcomes there within it. We had the COO of the Blue Jackets on last week as we're recording this here. And my favorite thing that he said was, I need people who can own the outcome. We don't want a cog in the wheel. We want somebody who sees something and they run with it until it's across the finish line. That's what you get to do there with the Daily Show. Like you said, all the different aspects you touch there. As much as I want to pick apart the on ice product of the Leafs with you here, Nick, I do want to get back to the College of Sports Media and kind of where it all got started for you. Obviously, well renowned program. Lots of people attend there every year. Lots of people apply, are interested, know about it. But what was that experience like for you overall back in the day there now? And what made you want to come back and join as an instructor here in January?
Yeah, it really ages me a bit, but yeah, way back when in 2011, I graduated from the College of Sports Media, and that was a 2-year program following 2 years at Fanshawe College. I don't want to leave them out either because I thought that was a tremendous sort of institution for laying the groundwork for what I think has turned out to be a pretty decent, respectful, I think, career. Respectable is maybe the word. 15 years later, but yeah, my time at the College of Sports Media was like the launch pad for my career. I think just instructors alone. Like I think back to when I was there, David Amber taught me, Elliot Friedman, Roger Lajoie, the great Jim Van Horn, Ray Williams. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I think that's the big grab to that school, that it's hands-on. And I think it sets you up for the workforce. I think the big grab I had too is like the internship I got out of school. Now, mind you, you can get internships wherever you want, but you got to do something with that internship. And it was sort of right place, right time, but it was also me not taking no for an answer. Like that's been sort of the story of my career is my perseverance. And within 3 months of getting this internship at SiriusXM NHL Network Radio, I was hired, doing updates on air at like 21 years old. I mean, it doesn't happen, or it didn't happen as frequently back in the day. Now it's a bit of a different story where people come out of school and right away, it seems like they're on TV and on the radio, but it was sort of a different path. But I really feel like that school set me up for success from the onset. And I think to your point, Nick, I love the idea of giving back. Like I remember being a student in those seats, and the pressure and the anxiety that came along with like, yeah, I'm going to a really sick school, but like, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to get a job out of school? Because I think you're sort of in big time trouble if you don't get hired within the first couple months. Not to mention the other schools out there that you're playing in the same sandbox against, where you're trying to get hired over these people. So I think there's a lot of anxiety that goes with that, with being a student. So yeah, I want to give back a bit here.
That's awesome, and I think I'm sure you will. And again, the connections you make through those programs and education are super valuable and still helping you out today. There, like you said, you touched on SiriusXM NHL Network Radio. There, the experience you had there, aside from the agony of working with our buddy Tyler Mataraz, how was that experience? How did it let you kind of grow on the job, get your confidence on the air, on camera, all those different things?
I owe a lot to that place, man. I spent over a decade working there, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but it was my decision to move on after 8.5 years, which I don't know if I would endorse that type of move. It worked out for me, where 2 months later, I got a call from Dave Cadeau at Sportsnet. Next thing you know, I'm hosting Leafs broadcasts. I think to make a move like that, you got to be pretty confident in what you can bring to the table. But I will say for those 8.5 years, I learned so much. I think a big thing I would stress to students out there is versatility. Be good at a lot of things. I think my biggest issue when I was in school, I was so driven and motivated to do one specific thing. Whereas I look at my career 15 years later and I'm like, man, I can do a lot of different things. And that's what's a big sell point. It's like, okay, so what? I think I can hack it on air, but what can I do behind the scenes? Where can I bring the value to a company? And I feel like that's a big sell point, and that's a big reason why the Nation Network to begin with hired me. But I think you just look back at like NHL Network Radio, just sort of put me on the map. I think a lot of it was right place, right time. It's funny, like I think 6, 7 months in, they approached me about hosting the night show called Ice Cap, which was like a recap show where I just talk quickly about every game in an hour span. And again, I'll say, like, I was fortunate enough because the person who was doing the gig, like, they wanted to move off of, and as most companies are these days, they didn't want to hire externally, so they asked an internal guy with minimal experience. But I said, hell yeah, let's do it. Like I remember the first show I hosted, I wrote my whole script. Now I write nothing. Like I just go into it. I have an idea, a basis of what I want to do interview wise, but it's all a plan in your mind. And I think it's all about reps and consistency. And the rest has been history. I've been, I was very fortunate again in 8.5 years there to cover so many amazing events, from all-star games to drafts to Stanley Cup finals. But I think some of it was right place, right time, but the other part was like just perseverance. Like I've always been the type of person, when I put my mind to something, I execute and I do it. And I think again, that's been a launch pad for my career, is the 8.5 years there.
Yeah, I think something me and Nick talk a lot about is just saying yes to these opportunities, right? Like you don't know when or what will come your way, but being open to trying something really can give you that step up and push you to that next level in a lot of sense. You mentioned you spent almost a decade at SiriusXM. Who were some of the people that you met there that helped you the most or that you learned the most throughout your time at SiriusXM?
Well, firstly, I would bring up the name Joe Thistle, who's the one who believed in me, who hired me out of school. He's now since retired, but he's like was my first boss. And after that, it was Peter Burse, who's like a director or a senior producer there now. He's running the whole operation, but he believed in me as well and gave me that opportunity. The great thing about that place, it's like they don't really deviate. It's a lot of the same hosts that have been there for a lot of years. Scott Lachlan, absolute gem. Work with Steve Koulias, Gord Stellick, who I think I was fortunate to know from my time at NHL Network Radio, which worked hand in hand after I was hired for that role with Sportsnet doing the Leafs, games on the radio because I worked with Gordo, so I already had a relationship with him. You guys mentioned Tyler Mataraz, Jake Hahn. Jake and Tyler specifically, I want to single those guys out because they're damn good at what they do. And I think a lot of people who listen to that channel don't realize their worth. And it would be great for those guys to spread their wings a bit more, but they're doing a great job. And I think exposure is everything. So like there's a lot that goes into what makes that place so special and so great. And I think opportunity was so vital. Like I remember how many frustrating nights I spent there because it's a grind. I mean, you've got to put that out there too. It is a grind of an industry, especially when you're covering hockey specifically. It's happening at night. So I missed out on a lot of birthdays, occasions with the buddies, getting ripped on a Friday night. Like it was nights and weekends for the most part of 8.5 years, boys. And I think from the onset, if you're looking to be a broadcaster, you've got to come to grips with the fact of, do I really want to do this? If you really want to do this, there's going to be a lot of sacrifice involved. And I'm proud to say that I sacrificed a lot to get to where I'm at today.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when you look at that sacrifice, you almost don't see it as a sacrifice because you're looking at the long-term game, right? You're not looking at what am I missing out on right now? It's more what am I going to become in the future? And to pivot a bit here, you obviously mentioned that you took a bit of a leap of faith to go to this next opportunity at Sportsnet. I know we chatted a bit about Sportsnet before the show here, as I currently do community management there. But talk to me a bit about your experience overall there. I know you mentioned maybe it didn't end as you expected, but I'm sure there was some super valuable lessons and people that you met along the way.
Yeah, no, it was an overall good experience. I mean, for somebody who loved the Maple Leafs growing up, if you were to tell me when I was 10 years old, you'd be the pregame, intermission, postgame host for games on Sportsnet 590 The Fan or whatever it's called now, like I'd pinch myself. Like it's pretty crazy. I mean, the only crappy part about it, I was there for 2 years. I believed I joined in October of 2019. And so I'm looking forward to the summer. I finally moved downtown at the age of 30 and boom, pandemic hits. So the 2 years I cover the Maple Leafs, it was like, it wasn't a full experience. I barely got the feel of being at the arena and calling the game on the radio and looking down and watching the game. Like they're in the bubble against Columbus and Montreal. So that was the only drag, but you learn a lot about yourself in your career. I think it's important to stress you are going to be knocked down more than a few times. It's how you recover from that knockdown. We all have our day. I've got no ill will, no bad words to say about that place. Stuff happens. New people get hired. People have their people. I get it. And I think you have to think that way too. Like it's so easy to be reactionary when you're laid off or let go from a position, but you got to remember it's a small industry. Like it really, really is very, very small. And who knows, down the road, the person who let me go could be interested in hiring me. And that's the way I think. And that's the way I think you have to think about things.
I think that's a very important lesson, and especially when we talk about Toronto and the College of Sports Media is right down there, and Sportsnet and TSN and the Nation Network. It's a pretty small industry, and it's a small town feel there, right? You go to the Leafs game, you see all the same people, so it's not about burning those bridges. It's about building those relationships, like you've said here, Nick. Another one of those endeavors on your resume here is the NHL's Fantasy on Ice podcast. There, you talk about kind of pinch me moments. I would assume if I told you 15 years ago at the College of Sports Media that you would be under the NHL's name talking about fantasy hockey and betting, that'd be pretty damn cool, right?
1,000% a pinch me moment. And I mean, not a lot of people know this, but at my time at NHL Network Radio, I was hosting a podcast once a week that was available on the SiriusXM app that was called The Fantasy Fix. And with that, I was having various fantasy guests once a week on the show, like just putting in my reps, doing my thing. And Pete Jensen, who headmans the operation over at NHL.com/fantasy, we developed a relationship, and then an opportunity came up. Obviously, being on NHL Network Radio, a lot of people at the NHL listen to you and know you, and I linked up with my boy Bob Bender, and next thing you know, I'm the co-host of this podcast. Next thing you know, I'm promoted to the host of this podcast. So it goes back full circle to where we started the conversation, building relationships, and you sort of go from there.
Yeah, and speaking of building, I think one thing nowadays with people trying to break into the sports media field is feeling that pressure to build your own platform online. And how important do you think consistently posting your own content is today compared to maybe back when you started? Obviously, like the age of social media has just continued to grow, and you see it more and more now that people are starting out on themselves, posting their own content, and then getting these opportunities with maybe bigger companies.
Well, the first example I would use is Johnny Lazarus. Like when I first, realized and noticed who the hell this guy was, it was just social media, the consistency, the passion for the game. And then I realized, oh, he played college hockey. Oh, he filled, Cale Makar's water bottle on a daily basis at practice, right? Like there was this guy put in his time too. And look at what he's done with his social media following. It's funny you asked that question because even like it's perfect because the College of Sports Media, way back when, the great Roger Lajoie taught me. And it was right. Again, this is dating me a bit, but when Twitter became a thing, and Raj comes into class one day and he's like, you guys need to create social media accounts. Let's start with Twitter. And that's where the Golden Muzzy was born, guys. Like it was Movember. I used to smoke a lot of darts. I don't anymore, 7 years dart free, but it came in a bit blonde up top. And I used it as a placeholder. I'm like, oh, I'll change it to like N. Alberga one day. The Golden Muzzy is what it is here on this November 17th. And lo and behold, 15 years later, I've grown this brand. I wasn't even intentional in growing. Like I have t-shirts, like people know me as Muzzy. Like it's pretty crazy full circle. But now when they see my stuff, it resonates. Oh, Nick Alberga, the Golden Muzzy. It was very unintentional, but I think to answer your question, I think it's so vital that, consistency, reps. I have come into contact with a lot of students right now who've put podcasts together. I think that's important. Like that, start early, start often, hammer it away, be consistent, be resourceful with your time, especially if you have dreams and big aspirations. The brand is everything. Like at the end of the day, that's what you're selling. It's not just your name and your abilities, but what do you bring as a whole, as a brand, right?
Yeah, and I think more than ever before, I'm hearing it with a lot of different companies and agencies that they don't want to hire somebody who's never done this. So even if it's just you sitting in your parents' basement recording, Leafs game recaps or morning takes, whatever it is, just getting stuff out there and showing you know how to do it, that's so much more likely to get you that first opportunity because so many people want to do this stuff that you can't just apply to the Nation Network or John Boy Media or ESPN, TSN and say, hey, I want to do this. Like, no, you have to show that you can already do it, right?
Well, a prime example of that, and I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Zach Phillips, who
Paid you
does
up pretty good, huh?
he is so special. It's actually crazy. Like this guy's got no background in broadcast. I think it's sort of similar to Johnny Lazarus' story. Last time I checked, I don't think Laz has a background in broadcasting, and maybe I'm wrong on that. But Zach and I got to credit my boss Almo Delich, like found Zach's YouTube channel and look at him now. Like sky's the limit. He's working with Jeff Merrick. Like this guy's mid-20s, not really a background in broadcasting. We sort of laugh all the time because I'm like, I went here and I went there and, I put in 15 years. Then Zach comes off the street and man, he is so versatile. He can host, he can produce, he can edit. He's so good at graphics. And that's the sell point. And I will say it doesn't happen very frequently where you find somebody like that. Like this is once in a blue moon, but I think practicing as early as you want, who knows, maybe Zach was proficient at Photoshop when he was 17 or 16 or 15. Like if you got your head right and this is what you want to do, then put your mind to it. But yeah, there are similar occasions where you're sort of plucked off YouTube, but I want to make a note of bringing Zach up because I think it's such a crazy story to where that guy was even like 3 years ago to where he is now and the great work he's doing.
Yeah, and I think speaks to what we've been saying of like putting yourself out there. Just like give the possibility of someone finding what you're doing, and if you're right place, right time, it can turn into something great. So one of the last things we always like to ask here is what is the best piece of career advice you can give to someone looking to break into the game of hockey?
Ooh, this is a big one because I remember very difficult nights on is Teamwork still a website, guys?
Yep.
Very discouraging nights on Teamwork, just firing off resumes that were never going to be read. I love, by the way, I want to add, you guys are doing a great job because I think when I was coming up, even after getting hired, it was so hard to find anybody who would actually talk to me, especially in the States. Like, I think it's really hard to get a visa. But advice wise, one thing that really resonated for me back in the day was Roger Lajoie. When I had him, the great Roger Lajoie, he had some infamous quotes, but one of them was "Be quick, but don't hurry." Like, think about that quote, and it's something that stuck with me for 15 years. But I think kids these days, and I hate saying that, I'm just 36, but they want everything now. And I was the same way at 21. I'm like, I want to be hosting Hockey Night in Canada. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to break it to you, it does not work that way. You've got to put in the time. I think if you put in the time, you'll get the break. I think you have to have thick skin. I think at times people are going to tell you what you don't want to hear, but that's part of what makes you a broadcaster is like you get pushed down. You're going to get up or just call it a day and crawl away. And that's all she wrote. Because there's a lot of examples of that too. So I think be consistent, be strong, believe in yourself, and be available. I think availability is so big. It gets back to the full point there. There's a lot of people that I've come across in my career. You either have it or you don't. You either want it or you don't. And you can tell really, really quickly, guys.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And again, I love the analogy of things don't happen overnight. And, prior podcasts there, we had somebody say, everybody talks about a career ladder, but it's a staircase and there's different length stairs and some of them go up and some of them go down. Like you talked about through your journey, it's not just a straight line to the top. There's a lot of, mass applying to different jobs, reaching out to different people, all those things along the way that all three of us have done through the years. To end on a lighter one here, Nick, and again, can't thank you enough for the time and the insight of your career and journey here. But as we sit here, it's December 17th. Spoiler for everybody, we record these in advance. The Leafs had quite the game against Chicago last night and now find themselves 15, 12, and 5. By the time we post this, Nick, January 5th, the Leafs will have played 9 more games. What will be the record over that 9-game stretch? Will there be any crazy shakeups to the roster? And will they be in a playoff spot January 5th?
I'll say no to the playoff spot. I just get the feel this team's going to stick around. And that's not just me as a Leafs fan. I think there's just so many examples of teams that have mediocre regular seasons get into the dance. I think we're at a point. It does not matter who this Maple Leafs team plays. We talk about it every year. Rosie gets mad. I'm like, dude, I've seen them lose to Columbus, Montreal, Boston. I mean, Tampa. Like, it just go. Who cares who they play? I think we're at a point where these guys are good enough. As we record this podcast, I interviewed TJ Oshie, who won the Stanley Cup back in 2018, and he talked about buy-in for I think 18 of the last 19 minutes of this interview. Go check it out, the Leafs Nation 401. But it was one of those things where he's so right. Like, I think you look at this team and this roster, and if they can put it together, I mean, you just never know. The next 9 games, I'll say they go 5-4 or 6-3. I think they're going to be sniffing around a playoff spot, and it'll naturally come down to the last month and a half of the season if they can drag themselves in. If they can, I like the roster on paper. I like what they put forth. I think they have a lot of playoff style type players, but there's got to be buy-in with this team, guys.
I was hoping for a much more optimistic and inspiring response, but unfortunately, I find myself agreeing with you on all fronts there. I think we can hope for better in 2026, but Nick, thanks again for the time here, man. Tell the people where they can check out Leafs Morning Take.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me at the Leafs Nation 401, where you could subscribe on YouTube. We got Leafs Morning Take on there, and we got Zach Phillips' show as well, TLN After Dark, and also available Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. If you do it that way, please leave us a 5-star review. But yeah, it's been a magical ride, guys. I can't believe it. We're approaching 20,000 subscribers. I remember the days of doing the first couple shows, and we had 6 people watching and 3 were family members. So we've got, there you go. And Nick Bowins was one of them as well. So we've come a long way. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the future here.
Absolutely. Nope. Thank you for the time, sir. Everybody, thanks for listening to this episode of the Working in Hockey podcast. That's what happens when you don't go to broadcasting school, but we'll see you next week for another episode.